Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is the Survivor's Guide to Life. My name is Jessica and this channel is dedicated to all things trauma, the brain, and healing. So if that's your jam, click that subscribe button down below so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And while you're on it, jump on over to Instagram where you can learn more tips and tricks on how to improve your emotional health and emotional well-being. So in today's video, I just wanted to talk about mindfulness as part of your healing journey. Now, I will be the first person to say that I was always skeptical of mindfulness. It seemed very, what's the word, like hokey or just like new agey. And there's nothing wrong with anything, you know, like new energy, like new age information, but that's just like something I typically don't connect with, or it doesn't really resonate with me or speak to me. But I want to say that part of healing journey, especially my philosophy as a therapist, but just also my community of therapists who work and specialize like I do with trauma survivors, especially complex trauma, traumas that occur during childhood, we really believe and see the results of working somatically, that and from the bottom to the top, with the mind-body connection, as opposed to like the top-down approaches, which you'll get with like CBT or psychoanalysis / psychodynamic theory of psychology. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's just a preference. For me, working with the body, working with the mind, focusing on the healing by reinforcing skills and resources, somatic skills and resources that you already have, and also teaching you some more tips and tricks and tools that you don't know, to expand your repertoire of resources, moving from the bottom to the top in the way, which is the way that our brains actually develop beginning in utero. During pregnancy, the physiological components of your body, your heart rate, your respiration rate, sweat glands, metabolism, all of that stuff starts to form in utero based on food intake from the mother's stress level, so how fast or slow her heart is beating, stress levels, like her hormones, all of that kind of stuff that gets filtered in and affects the developing uterus. And so when baby comes out, they have a lot of those kind of key regulatory components already in place, like the building blocks basically of subsequent development. And so those first 5 years, as I've been saying in all of these videos, is the most crucial time in which neural connections are developing and connecting so fast. And with complex trauma, a lot of the attachment disruptions and the physical abuse or neglect, any of those adverse experiences that can affect the development of the brain. And again, when I'm talking about development of the brain develops in a sequential fashion. Everything kind of builds upon the other, and it's built upon what's being used repeatedly. So when I do the NMT brain mapping for my clients, I look for parts of the brain that are highly developed, and these are usually the survival adaptations because of their trauma histories. Those are fully kind of developed because they've been used repeatedly, whereas other parts might be underdeveloped. So part of the therapy is building upon and helping strengthen those pieces that are underdeveloped so that everything becomes developmentally appropriate. And just remembering too that the prefrontal cortex, the top part of the brain, which is the largest, most complex part of your brain, is the one that takes the longest to fully develop. It's done by the time 25, 26, barring no kind of gaps in there or trauma. With trauma, like the development of the prefrontal cortex can actually be delayed. You'll have some gaps in there because you didn't learn certain tools or tricks because survival was the key focus. We're talking about survival adaptations. We're talking about the fight, flight, freeze response that gets activated in all of us when our body senses a threat or there's danger lurking. And so for folks who've been repeatedly victimized, their body and their brain becomes more sensitized to signs or triggers in the environment, which connects with their own internal experiences. Once triggered, a flood of hormones get released that kind of dictate certain behaviors. Again, either the mobilizing defenses of fight or fleeing, flight or fighting, or immobilizing defenses kick in, and that's the freeze response. And these are out of your control. You can't like will yourself if you're truly in danger to do something different, because the prefrontal cortex gets shut down. So threat comes in, goes through your five senses. Within like seconds, the body makes a choice. Okay, this is something I can't get away from, so I'm going to freeze and prepare myself to be assaulted.
Editor Jessica jumping in real quick to say, now this next part of the video is going to talk all about mindfulness and how you can use mindfulness as part of your healing journey.
Just want to throw out there that this video is not a substitute for therapy, and that even though I'm going to be talking about mindfulness and tools and tricks you can use to have more mindfulness in your life to help manage your trauma symptoms and trauma reactions, that these can potentially be destabilizing or make you feel more dysregulated. And so caution should be used if you're trying to employ these techniques. Really highly suggest you use them in a therapeutic setting to minimize that, and but also so you can have that support as you're learning these techniques. But again, these are tools and techniques that are really shown to be beneficial in the healing process of trauma. So one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about mindfulness again is because mindfulness is not a way of discounting or ignoring your feelings or your pain or avoidance or trying to change the bad that happened or to minimize your feelings or experiences, but it's really helping you to get connected and get curious about your body's sensations, about why you do what you do, how certain triggers in your environment cause you to behave in certain ways, usually opposite of what you want or you cognitively believe that you want. So you're not trying to change anything, you're just observing what's going on. You're getting more connected to your body, because that gives you information about what your needs are and will give you more power to then say, okay, this is what I can do about that. As opposed to kind of feeling like you're a slave to your trauma reactions. They just kind of, you get hit with something, like a trigger happens and you feel like a wave, you get hit with all of the emotions and the pain, and you don't know how to stop it, and it's very overwhelming. By being mindful and staying curious about these sensations, these urges, these impulses that you have, you can dive deeper and dissect them and practice and differentiate between what's happening right now, right? Like, is this a real life or death situation where my stress response system needs to be kicked in? Like a lion's chasing you, somebody's coming, they're gonna rape you, or is it your boss is just angry and your boss is not your uncle who sexually violated you or physically abused you, right? Your boss is just a different individual. So you don't need to employ those survival techniques to deal with your angry boss in that same way that you would if you were trying to deal with or fight off or avoid the person who harmed you in the past, if that makes sense. Also, one of the things that mindfulness does is that it helps your arousal level stay in the window of tolerance. And one thing that happens with trauma survivors is their window of tolerance, or your ability to cope with stress or life stressors, goes from being, large, which is what you want, and for people like typically developed folks or people who haven't experienced trauma have a larger window of tolerance, so that if something happens, they feel the effects of stress and they feel the impact of and the feelings and the emotions that come along with feeling angry or sad or whatever, but they can manage it. They're able to curb their impulses in order to make sound judgments or a plan of action that works for them, as opposed to someone who's experienced multiple traumas. That window of tolerance is smaller. It's small because of the way that the repeated firing of the stress response system without any resolution kind of stunts that, right? Makes it, it decreases it. So I hope that makes sense and I'm not like rambling too much or anything. Also with mindfulness, one of the reasons why mindfulness is so powerful is that when you have traumatic memories, and again, trauma, even if you don't remember all the details of it, your body remembers. So it gets trapped, it gets stored in certain parts of your body. So you might feel tension in your shoulders, pain in your neck, anxiety in your stomach area, constriction of your chest. Like these are all places where the trauma, the memory of the trauma is stored in your body. And once something happens in the environment that triggers those feelings, right, those sensations in your body, then your stress response system, because it's been primed and wired after repeated use, goes, oh, this is that thing. There's a scary guy over here. This smell comes in, or this visual input comes in. In my stomach, I feel this butterfly feeling, or I feel this tightness in my chest. Now I'm gotta deploy because it's danger, right? You're gonna die. You know, your life is at risk. Like that's basically the alarm bells that get signaled, and then you're off to the races with the stress response system, the fight, flight, freeze kicking in. So you're gonna either run away, you're gonna fight, or you're gonna kind of freeze and shut down. And that's kind of the automatic response to that trigger, and that's what it looks like, that's what it feels like. But when you use mindfulness and you incorporate mindfulness technique, you can pump the brakes, right? You want to allow for that cortex to come online and do its job and to mediate those impulses to fight, flight, or freeze. So when you're being when you mindfully observe, again, you're not judging, you're not putting any meaning or ascribing meaning behind. You're just literally asking yourself, what am I feeling in my body right now? I'm going to give you a list of 4 questions that you can ask yourself when you start to kind of feel that wave of emotion, or that trauma symptom, or those trauma reactions coming on. You just get curious about it. So here are the 5 mindfulness questions you can ask yourself when you start to feel those waves come on. So think of them more of like mindfulness questions. So question number 1, what do I feel in my body right now? 2, where exactly am I feeling this tension in my body? Where exactly am I experiencing this tension? How big is this tension? Is it the size of a golf ball? Is it the size of a basketball? What's the size of this tension that I'm experiencing? What sensation are you feeling in your legs as you're experiencing this moment? Do you feel tingly? Do you feel strength in your legs? Do you not feel your legs at all? And finally, 5, what happens in your body when you experience a particular emotion? Anger, sadness, fear. What happens in your body at that moment? So as you're mindfully tracking these different sensations in your body, track also, or plot, or jot down, or whatever word you want to use, any thoughts or feelings or beliefs that come up as you are just noting these experiences that you have in your body. So I recommend that when you start to kind of start the mindfulness journey, get a journal, a notebook, something. Use your phone if you have to, and do voice recordings. But just track the different sensations, like I said, by asking those questions. Track those sensations that you're having in your body, and also think about and also track the thoughts and the feelings and the beliefs that come as a result of those feelings that you're having in your body. As opposed to the kind of cognitive therapy, top-down approach where you are looking at your thoughts and your feelings and how that impacts behavior. You're looking at your behavior and what you're thinking about, or what your thoughts and your feelings are about as a result of that behavior, if that makes sense. And you might be surprised at some of the messages that you have about yourself, or that you have about the world. Very often clients will report feeling like they can't protect themselves, or not feeling anything in their body, or like feeling the urge to cry, but there's an inability to cry. And as I look deeper, as I kind of look deeper, and they start to look at the thoughts and the feelings that come along with that sensation, or that desire to cry but not being able to, their beliefs that crying is weakness, or that crying doesn't solve anything. So they stop that. They inadvertently or unconsciously stop themselves from crying or feeling that emotion of sadness as a result. So when you use those questions, again, you're really just getting curious and really trying to explore what's happening within your body, within your system. You're not putting any judgments on it. You're not trying to fix them. You're not trying to change them. You're just getting curious. I can't stress that enough. You're just getting curious. One of the reasons that mindfulness is so powerful in the healing of trauma is that when you utilize these mindfulness techniques, you are actually increasing the activity in areas of your brain associated with positive affect. So your happiness, your joy, your pleasure, things that are often lacking for trauma survivors who are so fixated or so focused on the dangers that are in their environment, that's where the energy goes. They feel low, they feel bad, they have difficulty with self-worth. These are all signs and symptoms as a result of complex trauma, but and so because you're focused on that, of course your brain becomes more primed to those. And so what we want to do is shift that focus, shift that attention, so you can start to have more positive affect and literally feel differently about yourself, about the world, about other people, because these are all things that have been shifted and are affected for the negative when you've experienced trauma as a result of having those traumas. Also, again, because the prefrontal cortex is so vital in mediating those impulses, those urges that you have, when you use mindfulness, you're actually engaging that cortex. You're actually allowing for it to do its job, and that will also help you feel more empowered and more in control over your feelings, over your life, and your mental health and well-being. So that's mindfulness in a nutshell. You found that intervention or that tool useful. So now it's your turn. Comment down below. When you use these mindfulness techniques, what comes up for you? What thoughts or feelings are you having as a result, or as you're mindfully tracking the sensations that you're experiencing in your body? Comment down below. Let's have a conversation. I love hearing from you all so much. With that, I'll see you all in the next one.